In 2026, the whole world will set foot on the same piece of land because of the World Cup. But those who stay longer will find something that does not exist on any ticket. $100 billion tons of water disappear every day, then return without asking anyone's permission. Dinosaur bones push themselves out of the ground after 75 million years of waiting. Mountains rise so high that clouds cannot pass over them. They have to go around. And at the far northern edge, there are nights when the sun does not rise for weeks. But a polar bear is still walking across the sea ice, alone, in total darkness, as if it were the last living thing left on Earth. This is the only country where you can stand beneath a waterfall twice as high as Niagara without seeing another person. Where 16-meter humpback whales swim just offshore from small coastal towns. Where a straight road cuts through permafrost, leading directly into the Arctic Circle without stopping. No warning, no sound. Only the seabed suddenly exposed in the middle of the day. The mud still wet fish, still struggling. As if the ocean had just stepped out of its room and forgotten to close the door. Then, a few hours later, it comes back. Swallowing rocks the size of 3-story buildings that had been standing in the sunlight moments before. That is an ordinary afternoon in Canada. It burns, but not with fire, with light. Green, violet, red, dancing across white snow, as if something deep inside this land is trying to tell you something. And it has been waiting a very long time to speak. Canada does not ask whether you are ready. It simply begins. On the eastern edge of North America, where the continent finally gives way to the ocean, there is a land that lives by the breath of water. Twice each day, the sea rises and falls with a force unmatched anywhere else on Earth. This is the Bay of Fundy, and the first law of this land is written by the tide. You stand there, watching a vast bay suddenly disappear. The water drains away in only a few hours, revealing hundreds of towering stone pillars standing like an ancient forest forgotten by time. Then only a few hours later, the sea returns, surging back in, swallowing everything with a speed you can see with your own eyes. The tides here rise an average of 16 meters, and with each cycle, more than 100 billion tons of water rush through the bay more than the combined flow of every river on the planet. The people here call it the breath of the ocean, a reminder that human beings are only temporary guests inside the eternal rhythm of the sea. And that very breath, rising and falling for millions of years, has done more than shape the coastline. It has carved deep into the earth itself, exposing things that had never seen the light. Because there are places where the land reveals its own inner body. On a lonely shore in northern Newfoundland, thick fog covers long houses made of turf and wood, silent enough that only the wind and the sound of waves seem to echo from 1,000 years ago. This is Lanceau Meadows, the only confirmed Viking site in all of North America. The Norse, led by Leif Erikson, built this settlement around the year 990 AD, 500 years before Columbus was even born. The settlement lasted only a few decades before it was abandoned, likely because of the harsh climate and conflict with indigenous peoples. Today, only stone foundations remain, along with a cold forge and a truth that changed the entire history of the Americas. This land was the first bridge between the Old World and the New World. Those Viking footsteps stopped here centuries ago, but the trace of a path never truly disappears. It only waits for a new form to continue. And that new form is a smooth black ribbon of road winding along the very cliffs the Vikings once saw for the first time. This is the Cabot Trail, clinging to sheer rock faces with the deep blue ocean on one side and forests glowing red or green, depending on the season, on the other. Fog spills over the mountain peaks like slow smoke that never fully fades. Stretching more than 300 kilometers through the Cape Breton Highlands, this road is considered one of the most beautiful drives in North America. It does not only carry travelers into the heart of untouched nature, it is also the lifeline of small fishing villages along the coast. To the people of Nova Scotia, this is how they reveal the beauty of their home, the meeting of mountain and sea, and the quiet resilience of those who live between them. But this road does not only lead people forward, it leads into two living worlds that exist side by side, one deep in the forest, the other out in the ocean. In the misty boreal forests along the trail, a massive moose stands motionless, its antlers spreading more than 6 feet wide, its body weighing up to 700 kilograms. Yet still moving silently through the woods in search of twigs and young leaves. Offshore in the Atlantic, the powerful blow of humpback and minke whales rises into the deep blue air. Humpback whales can grow up to 16 meters long, migrating thousands of kilometers each year along cold, nutrient-rich currents. Using sound to call to one another through deep waters where sunlight cannot reach. The moose is the spirit of the wild inland forest. The whale is the spirit of the endless ocean. And these two worlds meet in only one place, where hard black granite stands between them both. There, where the ocean crashes against stone, human beings built a small symbol that has never surrendered. On the rugged black granite of Peggy's Cove, a red and white lighthouse stands alone as white waves break around it again and again. Built in 1915 with its distinctive octagonal shape, it is one of the most photographed lighthouses in Canada. It guides boats toward Halifax Harbour. But more than that, it has become the symbol of a small fishing community facing the immensity of the sea, small yet steady against every storm. And the people guided by that lighthouse return from the ocean each night with a treasure heavier than light itself, lobster, the creature that has shaped an entire coastal culture. At dawn, sun-darkened faces pull lobster traps from the cold water, small boats rocking on the waves as seafood markets come alive with human voices. Atlantic Canada is the lobster capital of the world, home to a billion-dollar industry that still preserves traditional trap fishing methods passed down for hundreds of years. People here live by the tide, by the lobster season, and by strict conservation rules designed to make sure the sea is never emptied. This is not simply a job. It is the way Atlantic people bind their lives to the ocean passing, that resilience to the next generation through every net, every boat, and every sleepless night spent waiting for morning. And when those boats return, when the fire is lit to cook the first lobster of the day, the sound of the fiddle begins to rise. Bright traditional clothing spins through local festivals. The smell of grilled seafood fills the air, and colorful wooden houses glow along the shoreline. The Acadians, descendants of French settlers who survived the Great Expulsion of 1755. And the Celtic people carrying the blood of Scotland and Ireland have preserved their language, music, and food across generations. Even though life by the sea has never been easy, each year Celtic colours and the festival Acadians still draw tens of thousands of people back home. This is the living strength of the entire region, where historical tragedy and the joy of life merge into one, reminding us that the identity of a people, no matter how much history tries to shake it, is never truly erased. That fiddle music carried by the wind seems not to stop at the shoreline. It slips through the forests, crosses the hills, and disappears into a greater current of air blowing inland. There, the rhythm of water is no longer the beat of the tide, but the roar of waterfalls that never stop falling. And there, towers of glass and steel rise in place of stone lighthouses. Atlantic Canada has finished singing its song of the sea. Now it is time to listen to a new heartbeat deeper inside the continent. And that roar announced from far away is no longer a metaphor. It becomes a real sound, arriving before you even see where it comes from, deep, heavy, shaking the air like the earth itself is breathing. A white wall of water crashes down from 57 meters high, while mist weaves rainbows into the air. This is Horseshoe Falls, the Canadian side of Niagara Falls, where every second 2,400 cubic meters of water plunge downward. Formed 12,000 years ago, it is still carving into the limestone, slowly retreating upstream year after year. People in Ontario call it the beating heart of the land, magnificent but fragile. And as if answering that force of nature with the hand of humankind, another tower rises into the sky. Not made of water, but of concrete and steel. The CN Tower stands 553 meters above Toronto, once the tallest freestanding structure in the world, for 32 years after it was completed in 1976. With its sky pod high above the city and the edge walk allowing people to step outside more than 400 meters above the ground, this is Ontario's ambition cast in concrete. But in this city, there are not only towers looking down over the lake. There is also a place where thousands of people breathe in the same rhythm. BMO Field stands near the shore of Lake Ontario at Exhibition Place. It is home to Toronto FC and the Toronto Argonauts, and it is also one of Canada's stadiums chosen for the FIFA World Cup 2026. During the tournament, it will be known as Toronto Stadium, expanded to welcome fans from around the world. Here, soccer is not just a game. It is the roar of an immigrant city where dozens of different languages can erupt together for a single goal. If the CN Tower is Toronto's ambition reaching toward the sky, then BMO Field is its heartbeat on the ground, the place where the city does not stand still to be admired. It moves, it shouts, and it lives inside every moment. But not far from here, another city chooses the opposite path. It stands still in time. Narrow cobblestone streets lead through grey stone walls covered in moss past old French wooden houses. This is Old Quebec, founded by Samuel de Champlain in 1608. It is the only fortified old town in North America, north of Mexico, whose city walls still remain recognized by UNESCO in 1985. A living witness to the French-speaking soul of North America, and the river flowing beneath those ancient walls had nourished this land long before Champlain ever arrived. Beyond the old streets, the water opens wide like an ocean in the heart of the continent. The Great Lakes connect with the St. Lawrence River, flowing toward the Atlantic Ocean, passing through the Thousand Islands and holding 20% of the world's surface fresh water. They sustain tens of millions of people. Locals call this the bloodstream of the land. On a cliff overlooking that river, another structure was built, not for defense, but for dreaming. Chateau Frontenac, built in 1893 in the Chateauesque style, was the site of the Quebec Conference in 1943 between Roosevelt and Churchill. It proves that even a modern building can carry the soul of a European castle in the New World. In Quebec, the fleur-de-lis flag flies. French voices fill the streets. And every winter, the Winter Carnival raises giant sculptures of ice. In Toronto, Chinatown and Little Italy exist side by side inside one of the most multicultural cities in the world, with more than 200 ethnic groups. Two spirits, French-speaking pride and the power of inclusion, form the diverse strength of this land. But among all these festivals, there are still corners of forest and lake that keep an older rhythm alive. In Algonquin Park, a beaver quietly drags branches across a still lake, building its dam, while the haunting call of the loon echoes at dawn or dusk. The beaver weighs between 15 and 35 kilograms, making it the second largest rodent in the world. To survive the long winter, it builds dams from wood and mud, creating calm water around its lodge. It relies on thick fur and special scent glands to stay warm and stores branches underwater before the lake freezes completely. The loon, a symbol of Canada, is 60 to 90 centimeters long. It can dive more than 70 meters deep to hunt fish, and it only chooses clean, quiet lakes for breeding, protecting its nests along the shore from waves and predators. The beaver is a national treasure, an image of patient construction and quiet labor once carved onto the 5-cent coin. The loon is the soul of the wild lakes. Together, they are the silent endurance that exists beside every human monument. Beside the Ottawa River, a Gothic Revival building glows like an ancient castle. The Canadian flag flies in the wind, and guards in red uniforms march in the daily changing of the guard. This is Parliament Hill, built from 1859 to 1927. It is the legislative heart of Canada, the place where Canada Day is celebrated, and a symbol of a democracy where French and English cultures, once divided, now help shape a shared future. The beaver still works patiently, building one small dam at a time, a tiny structure holding back a little water for itself in the crowded forest. But the farther west you travel toward the setting sun, the trees begin to thin, then shrink, then disappear altogether, as if the forest is slowly giving way to something larger than itself. The sky opens without limit. Sunlight pours down without the shadow of a single tree, and the ground, for the first time in this entire journey, has nowhere left to hide from the horizon. And then the ground suddenly changes its mind. It rises, not slowly, not gently. But all at once, as if the entire plain had been holding its breath for thousands of kilometers, only to release it in the form of stone. White-gray peaks tear open the sky right where there had once been only flatness. Glaciers hang in mid-air on the cliffs, as if forever collapsing, but never quite falling. And beneath them, an emerald lake lies perfectly still, holding the reflection of the mountains like a secret it is not yet ready to tell. These are Lake Louise and Moraine Lake, the two most famous glacial lakes of the Rocky Mountains, the great mountain range of Western Canada. A road called the Icefields Parkway, meaning the Glacier Highway, stretches for 232 kilometers between the mountain towns of Banff and Jasper. It passes beneath the shadow of Mount Robson, the highest peak in the entire range at nearly 4,000 meters. It is this massive wall of rock that stops the moist winds blowing in from the Pacific Ocean. And the meltwater dripping down from the glaciers above, drop by drop, across thousands of years, is the very thing that feeds every river and every field lying behind it. To the people of the prairie, this is the Western Fortress Wall, the one thing the horizon has never been able to swallow. But that wall of stone is only the story of recent time. Leave the peaks behind and travel south, and the ground changes color once again. This time, it does not rise. It collapses as if opening a doorway back into the past. A strange orange-red landscape appears carved with deep canyons and lonely stone pillars known as hoodoos. They were shaped by wind and rain eroding the rock over millions of years until only these strange columns remained like stone statues abandoned by time. Fossil bones appear everywhere beneath the harsh sunlight, as if the earth itself is whispering a story it has never finished telling. This place is called the Badlands, literally the Badlands, located inside Dinosaur Provincial Park. A UNESCO World Heritage Site that holds one of the richest collections of dinosaur fossils on the planet, with more than 300 species discovered here. "75 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, this was once a flooded plain filled with life. Wind and rain are still eating away at the layers of earth and stone. And every year, another skeleton rises into the light after tens of millions of years buried in silence. Standing in this land, you understand that the history of Earth is longer than anything human beings can imagine. And that every form of life, even one that once ruled the entire planet, can still return to dust. The dinosaurs vanished long before humans ever arrived here. But another animal far smaller than those ancient giants once ruled these grasslands in a completely different way, a way directly tied to human survival. The traces of that conquest still remain on a cliff not far from here. A steep wall of rock rises from the endless prairie. Wind whistles through the golden grass, and a modern interpretive center quietly tells the story of a hunt that lasted for thousands of years. The local people call this place Head Smashed in Buffalo Jump, literally the cliff where heads were smashed. Because this was the place where the Blackfoot, an indigenous people of the prairie, used a highly intelligent method of communal hunting for more than 5,800 years. They drove herds of bison over the cliff to their deaths. In 1981, UNESCO recognized it as one of the oldest and most important buffalo hunting sites in North America. By the 19th century, when Europeans arrived in great numbers, the bison herds were almost completely wiped out within only a few decades. And that hunting cliff fell silent, becoming a monument, a reminder of both the survival intelligence of indigenous peoples and the fragility of any species before human power. But that story is not over. Today, on those same grasslands, the bison are slowly returning, moving step by step, as if time itself is trying to repair what was broken. Massive bison herds moves slowly across the vast grasslands of Wood Buffalo National Park, each step heavy yet majestic. Each animal can weigh between 900 and 1,000 kilograms, making it the largest land mammal in North America. They live in large herds and migrate with the seasons across grasslands with no visible end. Their thick coats allow them to withstand cutting cold winds and the harshest blizzards of the prairie winter. Not far away, near the forests of the Rocky Mountains, a powerful grizzly bear suddenly appears among the trees. Weighing between 270 and 600 kilograms, it is one of the largest and strongest bears in the world. It is an omnivore, feeding on salmon berries and small animals depending on the season. To survive the long, brutal winter, it hibernates for months. And to find enough food for its massive body, it needs a vast territory stretching across both forest and mountain. The bison once stood on the edge of extinction, but today it is making a powerful return. It has become a symbol of the prairie and indigenous culture. The grizzly represents wild strength that has never been truly subdued. Together, these two animals are the living soul of the prairie. And that soul is also what another people here held on to, so time would not erase them. They are the Métis, a people of mixed ancestry between indigenous First Nations and Europeans, mainly the French. They wear bright red sashes over cloth shirts and dance the jig, a fast and joyful folk dance to the lively sound of the fiddle. Beside them, traditional wooden wagons called Red River carts still roll through powwow festivals. Traditional indigenous gatherings filled with dance drums and voices echoing across the land. The Métis carry the history of the Red River Rebellion of 1869 to 1870. When they rose up to defend their rights during the wave of annexation into Canada. They have their own language, Michif blending French with the indigenous Cree language, and they have a flag of their own, unlike that of any other people. Across generations, they have preserved their music, dance, and food in festivals held year after year, a blended identity that has never lost itself. That resilient spirit, passed down through generations of Western people, eventually crystallized into the largest, loudest, and proudest festival in the entire region. Thousands of cowboys in traditional Western clothing ride wild horses through clouds of dust. Packed grandstands roar with cheers. Country music fills the air, blending with the smell of barbecue spreading everywhere. This is the Calgary Stampede, the largest cowboy festival in the world. It began in 1912 lasts 10 days, every July attracts more than 1 million visitors each year and is known as the greatest outdoor show on Earth. Competitors take part in rodeo, the sport of riding and handling wild livestock. They race chuck wagons, the old mobile kitchen wagons, once used by cowboys. And they perform cowboy culture alongside Métis and First Nations traditions in an atmosphere that is part entertainment. Part competition and part tribute to the ranching heritage that shaped this entire land. And directly beneath the dust, kicked up by those horses beneath the ground on which the entire city stands. Lie two sources of wealth that have quietly built the prosperity of the whole region. Golden wheat fields stretch to the horizon under a deep blue sky. Between them, modern oil rigs continue working day and night. Alberta leads all of Canada in oil production from oil sands, a type of sandy soil containing a special form of heavy crude oil. Meanwhile, Saskatchewan and Manitoba are known as Canada's breadbasket, producing enormous amounts of wheat, canola, and lentils. Farmers and oil workers here must face extreme weather summers above 30 degrees Celsius and winters below -30. To keep production going year-round, they depend on advanced technology and relentless discipline. These two industries do more than create economic prosperity. They shape the identity of the prairie people, hard-working, resilient, and deeply connected to every inch of land they cultivate. As the day fades, the oil rigs remain lit across the dark fields, while the wheatlands fall silent beneath the prairie sky wide enough to feel endless. Out here, night does not arrive with noise. It arrives as space vast, open, and almost without end. The wind moves across the grass, over the empty roads, past the last fences and the last towns. It carries the smell of dry earth, iron fuel, and harvested grain. And slowly, the land begins to change again. The flatness that once seemed infinite starts to rise in the distance. The horizon grows heavier. Dark shapes appear far ahead, like a wall waiting at the edge of the world. The prairie has carried us as far as it can. Beyond it, the mountains are waiting. And beyond those mountains, the wind will no longer carry the smell of dry grass and oil. It will begin to carry the moisture of another ocean, heavier, bluer, and deeper than anything the prairie has ever known. This is the only land on Earth where a rainforest grows beneath the snow. Red cedars and Douglas firs, some rising more than 100 meters high, stand with their trunks covered in green moss from root to crown. They grow straight beneath snow-white peaks that never fully melt. Mist drifts between the canopies. Sunlight slips through in thin, fragile beams, like candlelight inside the dark. This is the Great Bear Rainforest, the largest remaining temperate rainforest on Earth. It stretches across more than 6.4 million hectares along the west coast of Canada. It receives between 2,000 and more than 4,000 millimeters of rain each year, more than most tropical regions on the planet. This forest absorbs carbon dioxide, regulates the climate, and keeps clean the rivers that flow into the sea. To the indigenous First Nations, this is not a resource. This is a sacred home, something that must never be touched by greed. Inside that sacred home lives a creature that even people who have spent their entire lives in this forest may never see once. A pure white bear steps silently out of the mist. Its fur is white as snow against the deep green forest, and its dark eyes look straight at you for a moment before it turns away. This is the Kermode bear, also known as the spirit bear, a rare subspecies of black bear carrying a special gene that makes its fur completely white. Only about 400 individuals remain in the world, and almost all of them live in this forest. Its white fur is not an accident. In the thick fog of the rainforest, the white color helps it disappear when standing on rocks in a stream hunting salmon. Its prey cannot see the white shape from above the same way it would see a dark shadow. The First Nations call it a spirit of the old forest, a messenger between the human world and the natural world. Leaving the shadow of the forest and moving toward the sea, another world opens. Massive black and white orcas glide across the surface of the fjords, deep, narrow inlets carved into mountain walls by ancient glaciers. They shoot columns of water high into the air, then dive downward like arrows. Orcas grow between 6 and 9 meters long, weigh between 3 and 6 tons, and are among the most intelligent whales on Earth. They live in family pods led by the oldest female, using a sound system unique to each pod to hunt and communicate. They migrate with the seasons following salmon runs as the fish return upstream. No two orca pods speak exactly the same language. The Kermode bear is the soul of the forest. The orca is the soul of the ocean. Two creatures, two worlds. One land that cannot be recreated anywhere else on Earth, and human hands have carved that land into every inch of wood. In Stanley Park, a 400-hectare forest in the heart of Vancouver Haida totem poles rise more than 20 meters high among ancient trees. Every carved line is a piece of history, a legend, a name of an ancestor not yet forgotten. The Haida and the Coast Salish have lived on this land of British Columbia for thousands of years. They hold potlatch ceremonies, unique Indigenous gatherings where wealth is shared and community bonds are renewed. They carve canoes from single tree trunks and pass history from one generation to the next through drums, dance, and spoken memory. They did not record their world through writing. They recorded it in wood, in drum beats, and in the living memory of the elders. Behind those totem poles, Vancouver rises with a modern skyline reflected in the bay. The snow-covered North Shore Mountains stand behind the city like a guardian that never leaves. The Port of Vancouver is the largest port in Western Canada. It is the center of an economy built from both the sea and technology, from Indigenous heritage and waves of immigration from across Asia. This is a city where rainforest and glass towers exist together, and neither one feels out of place. The Haida tell a story that the night sky is never truly dark, that behind the darkness there is always a light trying to escape, like a secret too great to remain silent forever. The young people in the village do not believe it. They look up at the Vancouver sky night after night, see only city lights reflected against the clouds, and think it is just an old people's story. But the elders know, to see that light you must go farther, farther still, to the place where no city stands between you and the sky. The farther you travel north, the thinner the forest becomes. Paved roads turn into dirt roads. Then they disappear. Street lights vanish completely, and for the first time, darkness becomes transparent. This is Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Where the map begins to empty and the final story of Canada is written in ice gold and light. In the late 19th century, the gold rush pulled tens of thousands of people across the dangerous Chilkoot Pass toward Dawson City. Where news of gold beneath the Yukon River spread faster than anything else. That town still preserves its wooden architecture from 1896, standing as a witness to the adventurous spirit of the North. Today, the Dempster Highway, the world's longest highway leading into the Arctic Circle, continues that dream. It crosses tundra, passes over rivers, and stays open through winter. when people drive across frozen river surfaces beneath a polar twilight that never truly ends. Permafrost, the permanently frozen ground, has existed beneath your feet for thousands of years. Glaciers like the Penny ice cap lie motionless like white mountains. Fjords cut into the land like scars left by time, turning this region into one of the harshest environments in Canada. But within that emptiness, Nahanni National Park reveals itself more violently than almost anywhere else. Virginia Falls rises twice as high as Niagara. Hot springs steam in the freezing snow. And stone mountain ranges, known as the unclimbables, stand like walls no human ambition can fully conquer. Nahanni means the spirit people. One of the wildest lands still remaining on Earth. Within this landscape, life survives in two opposite ways. The polar bear, the largest land carnivore on the planet, weighs more than 600 kilograms. It survives by lying motionless for hours beside a seal's breathing hole. Waiting for a single moment to strike, a thick layer of fat and hollow fur keeps it warm in temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius. But when the sea ice melts in summer, it must swim hundreds of kilometers in search of the remaining ice, becoming one of the most precise living clocks of Arctic warming. The muskox chooses another way. It does not run, it stands its ground. When blizzards arrive, the herd forms a circle, with the young protected in the center and the adults facing outward against the wind. The soft underwool close to its skin, called kiviot, one of the warmest natural fibers in the world, helps it survive. It scrapes through snow to find dry moss and endure the long winter. One species survives by hunting with patience. The other survives by standing firm. Together, they prove that in the polar world, there is no room for anything halfway. Human beings lived here long before any road existed. The Inuit of Nunavut once built igloos from blocks of ice. They sang throat songs from deep within the body and placed stone markers called inuksuk across the tundra to guide the way. The Dene preserved oral stories and fur clothing across generations. These ancient cultures still live with strength in one of the harshest places on Earth. When the long polar night falls, the sky above Yellowknife Whitehorse and across Nunavut comes alive. Green, purple, and red lights dance endlessly. This is the aurora. The Inuit believe these lights are the spirits of ancestors dancing high above. No roads, no streetlights, no human sound. Only you and the glowing ribbons writing the final lines across the sky. Step far enough back, and you can see the entire path you have traveled, the breathing tides of the east. The roaring waterfalls of the center, the bison that once disappeared and returned across the Western Plains, and the legend of light, once told by the Haida. Canada was never a single land. It has always been many smaller stories, told through water, through stone, and now through the silent fire burning above your head. Where that light slowly fades into the far northern night, this journey is allowed to end. Not because there are no stories left to tell, but because the country has finally said what it came here to say. Today's journey ends here, but if you want to explore deeper, click on the next video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next documentary.